I would see people in church and I would see them with full conviction, tears and worshiping. And I'm like, gosh, like, why can't I feel that? Why am I not like them? I had a dream, another dream visitation, and this time it was from my grandmother. A lot of my family members were there, and then my grandmother walks in wearing all white, and behind her was pure white light. There were just so many benefits that came with seeing myself and everybody else as actually these beautiful souls that we all come from the same place. We're just here trying to survive this human experience. Hi, my name is Laura West. I am a registered nurse and a psychic medium, energy healer, author, podcast host. So I would say a lot of what brought me to where I am today started many years ago when I was a teenager. And I'm sure there were things that happened before that, but again, that's when sort of the big, profound moments happened that come to mind right away. So growing up, I was brought up in a Jewish and Christian household, a multicultural household. My mom's Korean, my father is Caucasian, and he's also retired Air Force. So we moved around a lot, which actually wasn't a bad thing for my family. It was really nice to be able to move, and I know for a lot of military brats, it can be difficult to constantly get up and move every few years. But because our family unit was so strong, I feel like that's what really helped with those transitions. And so there was actually excitement with moving and meeting new people. So every time that we moved, we would then almost alternate if we went to church or synagogue. So church with my mom, and usually it was a Korean church, or synagogue with my dad. And then there were times where my dad actually was, they call it the lay leader, not the rabbi, but the lay leader who led the services, and they would be on base. And so we would go with these other people. It became like a really nice community and fellowship in both locations. I remember making friends in either and feeling accepted. However, there were certain things that I learned in the Korean church, and it was a Christian church, that I just didn't know if they jived with me. And a lot of it was, if you don't accept Jesus Christ into your heart, you are going to go to hell. And it didn't sit well with me because my dad was Jewish, and that they have a very different idea of who Jesus was in the religious history. And so I couldn't believe that my father, who was one of the nicest people, kindest people I had known, I still know, I'm so blessed that they're both still alive, that he's going to go to hell because of this. And so there were a lot of things that didn't sit well with me with Christianity. And then there were things in Judaism that just it never settled in my heart. Like I never took to heart. I loved going to the services for either. I loved the fellowship of being with these different people. But I would see people in church and I would see them with full conviction, praying to Jesus or praying to God, or, just tears and worshiping. And I'm like, gosh, like, why can't I feel that? Why do I not feel that way? What's missing, pretty much? And some may argue, well, you were confused. You were brought up with two different religions. See, I feel like I would have had that same confusion regardless. So it was during this time we had moved to Southern California. My dad had retired from the Air Force, and we started attending a Korean church. And it was great, new to the area, so was meeting people. It was really nice that way. Some people even went to the same school, so I was making friends and connections that way, which was really great. But I was at that point, about, 15, 16 years old, maybe even younger, and I'm thinking to myself, why am I not like them? Why is it that when we're in service, they are singing with their whole heart? They can pray, and they pray with the words that make sense, even though they're these sort of foreign sounding words. Like, I joined the choir, I did all these things, like hoping and wondering, why, when, and why am I going to feel this way? And so it was during this time that I had a surprising dream visitation, and I thought the timing was random and probably not the right timing, but what do I know? because at this time I had a dream visitation from Jesus. Now, in this dream, I'm in this dark space, and all of a sudden, this tunnel appears in front of me, and it's like iridescent clouds surrounding this tunnel. And Jesus walks through the tunnel arm in arm with a grayed out male figure. And Jesus comes, he looks like the quintessential Jesus that you see in those Renaissance paintings. And to me, I believe he appeared that way so that I would automatically recognize who he was. And he was wearing, I believe the toga part was blue and then like a white undershirt, like a white t-shirt underneath. And he walked over to me, and I remember my first thought when I saw him was, gosh, he's a lot shorter than I thought he would be. He was just more petite. So when he walked up to me, he then asked me if I would spread his word. And I was familiar with that language in the Christianity sense. To me, that meant evangelism. And I was just like, oh, like, how can I do that if I'm still trying to figure out how this all fits in for me? But I did tell him that I would try, and that was enough. After that, he turned around with the grayed out male figure, and they walked back through the tunnel. That part of the dream visitation was over. And to me, I knew that was a visitation because here I am, I don't know, 30 plus years later, well, 30, not quite 30 plus years later, talking about this experience that I had all those years ago as a teenager and still remembering those details and waking up from that dream and knowing in my soul, in my being, that that was a visitation and not just a dream. And this was before I was even opened up to the world of spirituality. I knew that dreams were a place to visit the other side. How I knew that, maybe I picked up on it in some way, but it wasn't something that I was practicing or actively in my realm of everyday living, but I knew that was a dream visitation, and it was profound and it was confusing. So I sat there wondering, okay, I wonder what this is going to look like. I knew that I had to feel full conviction for whatever it is that Jesus asked me to do. So I waited. I waited to see if I would feel more Christian. I waited to see how was his ask of me going to affect and apply to my life. Around this time also, I had another pretty significant dream visitation. It was probably about a couple years later after this. And again, I was in high school, probably about junior year in high school, and I went to go visit with my family, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, who was in hospice at the time, and she was passing away from cancer. And this is my Jewish, from the Bronx, New York grandma who had one of the biggest, loveliest personalities. And so to see her laying in a hospice bed on a ventilator, lifeless, quote unquote lifeless, it wasn't her. It was a shell of her. And that was a very strange thing to experience. It was almost distracting to the grief to witness this and to see her like this and to know that, gosh, it doesn't really feel like she's in there. And I'm going to say that she wasn't. I know now that our souls don't just sit in there and hang out. They will go and they will explore and do what they need to. After that day of seeing her in the hospice, that night I had a dream, another dream visitation, and this time it was from my grandmother. And we were all in my great-grandmother's house, who at the time was still alive. And a lot of my family members were there, living and past. And then my grandmother walks in wearing all white through the front door of my great-grandmother's house on the arm of her husband, my poppy, who at the time was also still alive. And behind her was pure white light. And I remember her walking in and me saying, "Grandma, you are all better." And she said, "Yes, I am." And then the next day we found out that she had passed through the night. So that story is giving me chills even now because of how profound and how real that visitation was. And I knew at the time that that was a visitation, and I felt very comfortable sharing that with my family. To backtrack a little bit, I do need to share that I'm very blessed and lucky, not only to have been exposed to different cultures, different religions, different places, but also that my parents and my sister were all very open-minded in the spiritual sense. So even though, we went to Christian church, we went to, synagogue, my parents were still very much open-minded to the loving teachings of Buddhism or the possibilities of spirituality. It felt like a permission I didn't really realize I needed or appreciated. So being exposed to all this really laid out that foundation that allowed me to explore and find where spirituality fit for me. And my parents were very, very open to, you guys get to choose, to my sister and me. You guys get to choose, what feels good. And so I'm so grateful for that, because I feel like if I didn't have that, I probably would have continued to try to fit into a puzzle that I didn't quite fit into. And so at this point, I'm still waiting to see how the dream visitation that I had from Jesus fits into my life. I had this very profound visitation from my grandmother that I knew was real. And then I would say maybe about a year or so later, I picked up my first Sylvia Browne book. And Sylvia Browne is a psychic medium. She's since passed. She was on the Montel Williams show all the time. She actually founded a church, a Gnostic Christian church, and she wrote many, many books. And so I would have my dad take me to the Borders bookstore. I don't know if you remember Borders, but some of these bookstores from back in the day that unfortunately aren't open anymore, so that I can find her books and buy her books, because we didn't really have, the internet wasn't really a place yet to go for all those sorts of things like it is now. And I remember I could not stop reading book after book after book. And I'm like, wow, this feels amazing. Like, this really resonates with me. Learning about spirit guides, talking about the other side, how we can actually connect with loving entities on the other side, and past loved ones, and how a reincarnation even, because all of those ideas that didn't really fit so much into Christianity in a way that they do with spirituality. So I was so excited, and my mind was just blown from book after book of idea after idea that Sylvia Browne had opened that door for me. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like even more confused. Like, how does this fit into what Jesus asked me to do? Because to me, Jesus was just Christianity or Catholicism, or, that section of religion and spirituality. I didn't think he belonged anywhere else, because no one ever talked about him belonging anywhere else. So I was still trying to figure out where this landed. And then, fast forward, I do the whole human thing, and I, go to college, and I become a nurse, and I get married, and we buy a house, and we have children, and I create this amazing, beautiful life that I am still so blessed with to this day. And 2019 hits before the pandemic, and I had an incident where I felt my intuition very strongly, and I didn't listen to it, and I suffered the consequence of that. And so that was an eye-opener. And at the time, the language that I had around that was, how do I learn to hone in on my intuition? All I wanted to do was be able to strongly recognize when I shouldn't do something, and what that feels like in my body, so I don't do it again. Because I'm the type of person who I'm getting more comfortable with ask for forgiveness later, but I'm more the person where I didn't like to get in trouble, don't like confrontation. And so how do I prevent that so that I can keep my life comfortable and positive and going in the direction that just feels really good? And so I had created some friendships in this area, other mom friends, and they were very open to spirituality and things that I was interested in, but hadn't really picked up on yet, but began to explore again. I will share that there were many spiritual experiences, even psychic and mediumship experiences that I had between, the dream visitation from my grandmother to 2019. So there were sprinkles of this, and in hindsight, I can see how it all ties together. But they didn't really propel me into this journey of, mediumship and intuition, etc. So in 2019 is when that all started. And I had a great friend who was like, oh, you should go visit this psychic. She's from a local new age store. She was really good. I heard good things about her. And so I decided to do it. It was my first time ever meeting with a psychic and going to a new age store and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, this is more going to be maybe interesting. I didn't want to have my hopes up too high, but I was really hoping that it would be real, but I wanted to be healthily skeptical. So I didn't put too much, I don't know, into it. Like I didn't want to give it too much of a weight. So I go to visit this psychic medium or psychic, and she's using oracle cards, and her reading was amazing and it was spot on. And I'm so grateful it was, because I think that if it were otherwise, then I think my journey would have looked very different. But because I was like, there's something to this, she's connecting to something, to someone, and and it didn't feel evil at all. There were so many things that were so validating and reassuring with this reading that it sort of gave me that permission that I didn't quite realize I needed to continue to explore. And so when we got to the subject of intuition and me asking her, how do I hone in on that? She says, you need to start meditating. And I hadn't meditated before that. I prayed many times, but I never listened and meditated. And so I started meditating. And I do have to share that the reason why I never meditated, because I was very worried about possession or inviting negative entities into my space. I didn't know what I was opening myself up into. And also to me, meditation was really for like gurus who sat on mountaintops and sat there in lotus position for hours on end. And so I didn't feel like it was something for me. But so then I started meditating, and I wanted to do it right. So I looked up YouTube videos and these meditation apps, and I really liked the guided meditations because they talked you through, they gave your brain something to do. So it was a really nice segue into meditation. So I started meditating, and that was one of the best things that I could have ever done. And it's one thing that I do encourage people to do, especially if they're wanting to connect psychically or, in a mediumship way to the other side. Meditation is the way to go. I'm a firm believer, because it was for me. So I started meditating, and then I started to realize that I was getting sensations. I was getting messages. I was getting guidance intuitively to start to explore things like mediumship and energy healing and crystals and all these things where I didn't expect to go. And I knew this because intuitively, like, oh, I really am interested in this. Like, oh, I want to do this. That's how I knew that I was being guided intuitively. That's what it felt like. It's very different from, I feel like I need to learn this, so I'll do it. It's like, ooh, like I really want to learn this. So I started to follow my intuition, and that took me on this wild ride of learning energy healing and signing up for that, and deciding to write a book and deciding to investigate mediumship. I realized, going on a little segue here with the mediumship, that I had been doing that for years already, but a lot of it was through dream visitations or during that, I believe, theta state of awake and asleep, where I was getting the visitations. And so I wanted to have a bit more control in when those occurred. I wanted to be conscious when those occurred. And so I started to explore and practice mediumship. And so that was part of the journey. So I do say that I had two spiritual awakenings. The first one was back when I picked up Sylvia Brown and my mind was blown. And then in 2019, when I started meditating, and then the intuitive breadcrumbs just were like laid out in front of me, and I couldn't ignore it. And so I followed them, and then led me to writing a book about my journey and about spirituality. It led me to starting a podcast and exploring it even more. And it has changed my life in so many profound ways. It's affected me in my job, on my everyday life, and how I interact with people and how I see people, how I interact with myself and the boundaries that I create for myself. So there were just so many benefits that came with seeing myself and everybody else as actually these beautiful souls, that we all come from the same place. We're just here trying to survive this human experience. And so in 2019, I also realized that I could channel right and things like that, which I actually was told by another psychic, because I was at school at the time. I was getting my bachelor's in nursing, followed by my master's in nursing, and there's a lot of papers to write. And I was like, gosh, this is coming very easily. And the papers were the parts that I was most worried about and concerned about. But when I realized that I was writing very easily, I was getting really good grades, and then this psychic, who had no idea I was in school, was like, I see that you're writing a lot, and that you're you can give yourself a pat on the back, but this actually information is getting channeled. And it made perfect sense because of how the words would just pop into my head. So I like to give myself some credit for having earned my degrees, but I know that I had a lot of help and guidance as well, which we do in all aspects of our life. And so all of that brought me to, back to that dream that I had with Jesus all those years ago. Like, well, why don't I just channel him? Why not? I mean, it's not like he's this foreign, not for everybody entity. Like, why not? So I decided to channel Jesus and ask him what he meant by that dream. And at this time, I will say I was already starting to get an idea of what he meant by that. But it was good confirmation and validation for me to hear a couple things that I learned when I channeled. So the first thing that I learned was when I asked him, what he meant by that, it was so simple. It was to spread the word of love. That was it. Because what did he represent? He represented love. I'm sure he represented a lot of things, but foundationally, he represented love. That was his word. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that I can do. Because that I felt like there were no rules around it. There were no boundaries around it. So spread the word of love. Got it. And I'll tell you, I've learned that can be so simple. It's just smiling at a stranger, saying hi to somebody, checking in on somebody, those sorts of things, like very simple things that can make the world of difference. So spreading the word of love, and I do that through, sharing on my podcast and other ways that just feel intuitively good. The second cool thing that I learned from that channel session, if you can recall, I talked about this male figure who walked arm in arm with Jesus in that dream. And I remember thinking to myself, as the years gone on, like, oh, maybe that was my spirit guide, or maybe that was a family member, but none of that came to fruition. And I never got any clarity on that up until I channeled Jesus, and I asked him. And I do want to share that it's kind of funny, because one thing that I didn't mention earlier was the male figure who was arm in arm with Jesus was wearing like a black and white flannel with the sleeves rolled up. So, I mean, very, very practical clothing. So that part to me was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. But anyway, especially when, seeing him arm in arm with Jesus, who was like in that very traditional garb. And so I learned who that male entity was, and in that channel session, I was told by Jesus that was God. And I remember thinking I had to put my pen down, because that was not my thought at all, because not once did that cross my mind, not once. And so I'm sitting there and I'm channeling that, and I was just like, I had to stop the session. Normally I don't, you just keep going, but I had to stop and put the pen down, because my mind was like, like, my first thought was, how was I worthy of this? Like, how? But I mean, I know we all are, but at the time it was just, my mind was blown. So here I am, in the present, with the same mission of spreading the word of love, whatever that looks like, whether it's through, readings with people and connecting with their loving entities or their past loved ones if they come through. Again, living it in my day-to-day as best that I can, because I am still human and still get upset at times or frustrated, but just trying to be be kind and patient as much as possible. And, in my work that I do, where I have people come on to my show or I have conversations with people and I share it with the world so that they can hear how spirit, loving spirit, has guided them in their lives. Because I feel like this could be a very lonely journey or it could be a very unlonely journey. It just depends. Everybody's so different. And so, to be able to just put that little bit of love out there as best that I can to help fulfill my mission that Jesus gave me all those years ago is where I'm at to this day. So to me, healing and helping people, anytime you're in a capacity of being around people, we're all still these spiritual beings having these human experiences. And so to me, even though many people might not see it going hand in hand, I see it very much going hand in hand, and have it through the compassion that you have to have when you're caring for somebody, and the understanding and the patience and the collaboration that you have to have with the patient and with your coworkers. So I feel like it goes very much hand in hand, especially as I learned energy healing. And I learned it actually from a registered nurse who created, it's called Healing Touch. And a lot of it is used in hospitals, more with cancer patients, but it is on a volunteer basis. And so it's not like the nurses are applying this. How amazing would that be if they could? But it is on a volunteer basis. And so it is being used in hospitals because it is actually evidence-based, which is fantastic, because to me that goes hand in hand with the medical field. Because a lot of our practices have come, especially speaking more from as a registered nurse perspective, based on evidence-based practices, why we do things a certain way, why we don't. A lot of it is from evidence. And so when I found a spiritual healing modality that was based on evidence, I just couldn't pass it up. And so I didn't. And so it's been amazing. I actually even wrote some of my papers in my master's program related to the energy healing and the studies. I was able to find journals and studies and things where they were able to prove the benefits of it. Placebo or not, there were benefits that came from it. And so to me, if you're healing the energetic body, I think it's so close-minded to not even consider the fact that there is more to our being than the human body. So to be able to heal the energetic body, and I feel like nurses do this without even realizing it. They don't have to do the motions of healing touch, but it's their energy and how they are around their patients. Are they kind? Are they compassionate? Do their patients sense that? Because if you get a nurse who's in a bad mood, you can sense, you could sense when anybody's in a bad mood, really. But if you're in a vulnerable position of being unwell and you're admitted in the hospital, or you're going to see the doctor because you're worried about something and you're not feeling that compassion, it really can affect you. But if you've got that compassion, even if it's just somebody there to listen to you, to me, I feel like you're being affected positively in all different manners, spiritually and physically. When I had spiritual awakening number 2 and I was going to work as a registered nurse with patients, it really was an eye-opener in the sense that I was able to see them more fully, understand them more fully as this soul who is supposed to be on this journey, and they're supposed to experience these things, and our souls are meeting at this time for whatever reason, whatever value we're supposed to provide to each other, because the patients teach us just as much as we teach them. But I did have to put some boundaries as far as with my coworkers, because I would meditate every morning before work. I would pull into the parking lot because I always got there early because I never want to be late. And I had enough time to do just a quick 10-minute meditation. So every time I went to work, I would do meditation beforehand. And there was a time where I did have to say, hey, when I'm at work, I can't get any downloads from the other side for another person. Like guide me and support me and communicate with me for, during my practice as I'm caring for people, making decisions. But if grandma comes in for my medical assistant, this isn't the time or place, because 1, not everybody's open to that. And 2, I don't want to be distracted. And so I did have to put up that boundary when I started doing mediumship while I was working as a nurse with patients and being in a building, because now I work from home. I did have to put that boundary up. I'm so lucky that the people that I would be working side by side and a past loved one would pop in, that they would be open because I had to. I wasn't open with my coworkers about the spiritual journey that I was on. So I had to be very tactful in how I would bring it up. Because, I mean, I'm talking about doctors, other RNs, medical assistants, LVNs. So, I mean, we're in this very like science-based field, of course. And so I really had to be mindful of how I would bring this up. I remember one time I was sitting in this room with this other physician, and she's one of the nicest people. So I felt very comfortable with asking her while I'm sitting there working on this other computer. And I asked her, I said, "Can I ask you a question?" Because I got her grandma in. Now, I do need to share that at the time when I'm learning about boundaries, it wasn't like I'm reading people, because I still understood the idea of respecting people's privacy. But sometimes I would sit there and I would just be intuitively guided to think, like who would come in for this person if I were to do a reading with them? And then boom, someone comes in right away. And so that's kind of what was happening, because I was in the thick of my mediumship journey and learning, that I couldn't help but kind of have those thoughts with people. And I will say that the vast majority of times when I had that thought and that person came through and I brought it up to the human in front of me, they would validate. I was just thinking about them. Oh, I just was looking at a picture of them. Things like that where I'm like, okay, I'm onto something. This is working. And so that was very validating. And so I couldn't help but like get excited and want to see who would come through. But I also was like, I can't like sit here and do a reading for them. So why would I even cross that border? But I will say that this one particular time comes to mind, and I was speaking with this physician, and I said, is your grandma in spirit? Has your grandma passed away? And she was like, oh no, she's still alive. And I'm like, oh, that's weird, because she's. So I had to explain to her why I even brought up this question, and I had to say, well, I'm working on my spiritual journey, and I'm learning that I can connect to the other side. Like, what do you say to people, when I'm a medium and I feel like I have your dead grandmother here with me, but she wasn't dead. I was like, oh, okay. Like, okay, so why is she here? And I confirmed it was the one, because I'm like, oh, it feels like your husband's grandma or something like that. I was able to confirm. She was like, oh, yeah, she's alive, but she has dementia. I was like, oh, that is why she came through. So for those who may not know, if you connect with somebody who's in a coma, who is nonverbal, or has dementia, something like that, you can actually still connect with them as if they were on the other side, because their soul is still very much intact. So that to me was like, okay, like that makes sense. Did I sit there and explain to her? I can't remember, to be honest. But to me, I was like, she was very responsive to it. There was nothing that she did or said, but I remember thinking like, I need to create this boundary. Like, I can't be doing this at work because I don't want to be distracted. So that's why I created that boundary. But I will say that everyone that I brought it up to, I think people are secretly like closet, right? Interested in the other side and mediumship and everything, because everyone I brought this up with was so interested and confirmed what I said, had asked lots of questions, that I felt very supported in that journey of navigating it with my coworkers at the time. So I have had it come in pretty much every way. They use all my faculties. I've smelled things. Have I tasted things? I don't know if I've tasted. I might have. A lot of it is through sight. third eyesight, and then a knowing and a feeling. So I feel like a lot of it is that way. And I can tell too, based on the language I use. So if I say, oh, I see this, they're showing me this. Oh, I just heard this. Oh, I just feel like this. So that's how I know what faculties I'm using as far as my spiritual senses go. So when I try to explain to somebody like, oh, like, how do you see it? What does it look like for you? Like, how do you know? And how do you know it's your thought and not, or, versus it being a message and da, da, da. And those are such good, valid questions. And until you do it yourself and until you practice with people to get the validation and to see what that feels like, you won't quite understand it. So I try to explain it the best way that I can. And is, say you are reading a book, and as you're reading the book, you're visualizing what the author is telling you. You hear the words that you're reading in your mind. They're not yours, but because they come from an outside source. It's kind of like that. So if I tune in, say for you, Adam, and I tune in and I want to pick up on how your career is going, it's almost like I'm remembering, like I'm using my memory, or I'm like daydreaming. It's like that part of the brain. It looks like that, but it's not me guiding the thoughts. It's not me thinking like, oh, if Adam did this, what would that look like? If Adam did this, what would that look like? It's more like, I'm going to sit here and you just tell me, you as in your guides or whoever, just tell me, what Adam needs to know to propel his career next. So that's the difference there, in that it then isn't my thoughts, it's outside thoughts that come into the same space where I may be daydreaming or where I may be thinking about something. So one example from one of the mediumship classes that I've taken before was, if you ask the person that you're talking to who's interested in, what do you see? Like, how do you see it? And they are able to visualize, because not everybody can visualize. Some people just can't visualize with their mind's eye, and that's okay. It can come anyway. But for those who are able to visualize, if you just tell them, okay, I want you to think of a red apple, and you're thinking of that red apple, that's what it looks like. Like, that's what it looks like when spirit sends me messages in my mind's eye. That's what it looks like. So I'm picturing the red apple myself right now, and that's the same place that I receive images from spirit as well. When I say hear things, sometimes I will hear things with my real ears and I'll be like, did somebody call me? Because I'll feel like I really heard it. But if I'm doing a reading for something and I hear something with my mind's ear, then it's more of like if I'm reading the words of a book. And so it's almost like I'm being told words that way. That one's a little bit harder to explain, I feel like. It's almost like you can see the word and then imagine hearing somebody say it, I guess, something like that. So yeah, I've had it come in all different ways, but I will say, as of now, so I don't limit myself for future possibilities, that it's mostly my clairvoyance, so being able to see it, my claircognizance, just knowing, and my clairsentience of feeling it. Learning to trust yourself as you're on this journey of mediumship or psychicness or channeling or whatever you want to call it. When we're connecting to the other side, I want to say for most of us, it's learning that subtle language. Again, where it's in your brain as more of like a memory, and is that thought mine or not? Trust is such a huge part of it. And I will say that I have friends who've been doing mediumship for decades, and they still question, and they still are learning to fully trust. So I think it's going to be a lifelong battle or a lifelong thing. However, it does get easier. It does get easier to learn what's yours and what's not. So for instance, like with automatic writing or channeling or whatever you want to call it, there may be times where the thought is yours, and that's okay. But a lot of the times, if you're just writing with whatever pops in and then read it later, so you're not analyzing it as you're writing it, right? You don't analyze it as you're doing it. You wait till the end. That's what's great about writing, is that you can read it back. And then you can read it back down the line too and see, wow, like this is amazing. Like you said, it won't sound like your voice in the sense that you may use words that you don't normally word. You'll speak in a tone that isn't yours. That's doesn't really sound like you. I find that when I connect with spirit guides, it's very like philosophical sounding, or very, very hopeful. It's like, you're doing a good job and everything's going to be great. I mean, I've come across spirit guides who are much more like in your face, and that's what their human needs. But a lot of the times you can tell the difference with the wording. And really what I have found that has helped more than anything with trusting what I'm getting from the other side really is practicing with real people. So for instance, with mediumship, you can sit there and try to connect for somebody all day long. But if you don't have that person in front of you, whether it's virtually or in person, responding to what you're getting and giving you validation and feedback and letting you know that's correct, that's not so correct, or that doesn't resonate as of right now, because it could later. But if you don't have that person telling you what you're saying is correct, then you don't have, you're unable to create that barometer that really allows you to start to learn and interpret your thoughts from spirit's thoughts. Because what happens is, as you do a reading for somebody and you get information, you share it with the client, and the client says, yes, that resonates, or, that's correct. Then you remember what that felt like, what that message felt like coming to you, whether you heard it, felt it, know it, saw it, whatever. You remember that feeling and you sort of bank it and you add it to your mediumship tool belt in a way. And then you do a reading for someone else and they validate what you get, and you start to realize and see, like, okay, like that again didn't feel like my thought, and I shared it with this person and it made sense to them. And so I'm starting to learn what that feels like, and you start to trust that what you're getting is correct, especially when you get the really good juicy pieces of information from spirit and the person is like, yes, that resonates, and you're like, wow, I could not have come up with that on my own. I mean, there are certain things that I feel like even sometimes I doubt when I say it, because I'm like, well, I feel like we all can relate to this, like, oh, you're going through a hard time, but because you're juggling so many things. And I feel like, gosh, everybody's juggling so many things. Like, I want more from spirit, but at the same time, I know that the person needs to hear it. But even sometimes I'm like, will doubt, where is this coming from? So really the validation from the client is huge. And the practice really helps. When I first started my mediumship journey, I started by doing channeled messages for people. And so I would share those with people, and then they would in turn, tell me, if it resonated, how they felt. That's the other piece too, is you really want your client to leave feeling not worse, hopefully better than when they were with you. If you're able to provide them with something that's valuable to them, and maybe it's something you picked up on, or maybe it's just that human-to-human interaction, then yes, I know as a psychic medium, we love nothing more than to know that we're getting it, we're getting our validations. I mean, trust me, I know that feeling. It feels amazing, but it feels just as good when your client leaves you feeling so much better and like a weight has been lifted. And it's like, oh, like to be able to do that for somebody feels amazing. So again, really, it's just the practice and the that you learn to start to build that trust when you feel what it's like in your body. Practice. I've had many people along my mediumship journey when I started to put myself out there back in 2019, starting 2019, 2020, and I started to put myself out there with it. I've had people say that they're praying for me, that please stop because what I'm doing is evil, all that, right? And, first of all, I always say, I welcome your prayers, so thank you. And then I choose to not respond to the ones who tell me that what I'm doing is evil. because I cannot in my soul believe that the work that I am doing that is bringing healing to people and making them feel better about life, themselves, their loved ones, is evil. If it were evil, there would be strife associated with that. There would be something wrong with that. And so I really have a hard time with that. The other piece that I always go back to is that I think it's human nature to automatically fear and deem something evil that we don't understand. I think it's a safety mechanism, right? It's like it's meant to keep us safe. Deep down in our human DNA, somehow we built that in. It's our animalistic tendency to need to stay safe. And so if we don't recognize something or understand it, it's automatically evil and bad until we learn to understand it. So I and a lot of my colleagues share that we're not here to change anybody's mind, because everybody really is on their own journey. That's what spirituality is all about. That's what this life is all about. And if you follow spirituality and you know that, then you know that people are on their own journeys and they're going to think that what we're doing is evil. I'm going to think that what they say is hypocritical. So that's just how it is. And if you're not going to try to understand me and, try to understand me out of love and compassion and kindness, like how Jesus would have, then I am not here to try to convince you or change your mind. You're on your own journey to understand that. I send them with love, but then, I've got to protect my own energy and my boundaries as well. So I think that's what really the basis and the root of it for me is that when we don't understand something, we automatically think that it's evil and out to get us. And so I think that mediumship goes along that way as well. Yes, anybody can connect with the ascended masters on the other side. And when we say ascended masters, we mean entities like Jesus, Buddha, Rumi, all the big wigs. And so anybody can connect. And it's as simple as just asking them a question. They are not out of reach by any means. I mean, we're all from the other side. And I feel like the sense that I'm getting right now is they want us to reach out to them. And of course, like I said, never say never, but most of the times they do almost want that initiation to come from us because it means more. It has a bigger impact or profound impact, I suppose, on the relationship and makes it stronger. But they absolutely want us to work with them in whatever capacity we intuitively feel like we should. So that could just be like the same way that we connect with spirit guides or with people who have passed. You can start to meditate and learn to practice and hone in on that ability to quiet the mind so that you can then receive the messages on the other side. That's what I think meditation does for us, is that it allows us to practice not getting the clutter out of our brains so that there is room for the communication to come through. So that's a great way. Again, setting that intention, I want to connect with Jesus, just whatever message he has for me, or if you have a particular question or a request. I feel like we pray so much more than we meditate. And, prayer is when you are talking and sharing what's in your heart to whatever entity on the other side. But then meditating, we got to listen. We also have to listen and receive. And so meditation allows us to do that. And yeah, it's probably more of an Eastern concept. And that's why it hasn't been picked up in religions like Christianity. But I feel like it's so important. Why are we the ones talking all the time? We got to also receive too. And so I feel like meditation is really, really great. Yes, pray and put your question out there or put your request out there and then listen and see what comes. I don't feel like we have to do anything special, anything different, unless we like the rituals, unless we like to create some sort of altar or whatever the case may be because we want to show the respect. That's fine. But they don't need that. I can tell you, it's just as simple as, say we get off of this recording and I just sit here for a minute and I ask Jesus, how did that go? And I could just feel like it feels good. It went well. it could be just that simple. So it really doesn't require much, and it's no different than connecting with other loving entities on the other side. 100% we reincarnate. To me, I know this without a doubt. I have had dreams myself of past lives. It's the only way that I can explain it. Like recurring dreams of being in a town or a situation where the town is being overtaken by enemy soldiers and things like that. Like just these recurring dreams. Concentration camps even. I've never had a past life regression, but I remember being in like a fenced in area, that sort of stuff. So I myself have had dreams that I know are glimpses into past lives. I've had in my life between life hypnosis session, I went back to a life as well. I think it was the 1600s, something like that. Anyway, I went back to a life as well. Besides my own experiences, there are just so many accounts out there, verifiable accounts of past lives, things that people would have no way of knowing. Are they famous figures? Not usually. It's usually just everyday kind of people. But there may be records that we can, go back and look. I think in India, there was this child who reincarnated and was able to share the names and the location of the family that they used to live with in their past life. And they went back and they were able to go visit that family. So there are just so many verifiable accounts. Children are great recorders of their past lives, as long as, parents and people listen. That part's amazing. Having like, these prodigies of being able to play the piano at the age of 3, or baseball prodigies and talking about their past lives as a baseball player. There's all of these things that, the Eastern world is like, oh yeah, we've known this for years. In the Western world, I feel like we're starting to catch up and understand it, become more, of common knowledge, I suppose, and maybe more accepting, and to the fact that we've had these past lives. I also just find it like difficult to think that this is the only shot we get. I just don't think that to me is realistic. Now, is this something that we have to do? No. The beautiful thing about being a soul is that we still have the freedom of choice. And I will say, when we are on the other side planning out these lives, you're on the other side where life is great. And so you think you could take on anything. And then we're here in this human world and we're like, what the beep was I thinking? Like, I would never have signed up for this. Well, actually, I kind of did. So, we do have that choice as well. But you can certainly say, you know what? I want to take a break from this. This Earth school is a lot harder than I thought it would be. I need a break. And so you may decide to stay on the other side and not reincarnate. You may decide to not reincarnate ever again. But again, that's the beauty of having the choice. You may certainly learn and evolve on the other side. I just don't see why not. Again, never say never. But yes, we definitely have the choice if we want to reincarnate or not, and what kind of life we get to choose. I have heard before, it's so interesting, maybe even read it too, of the process of selecting your body and selecting the life that sort of comes with it and what it may look like. So there is a lot of work and thought that goes into, as you can imagine, who your parents are going to be, what your job's going to be, what you're going to look like, because that can affect things too, where you're going to be born and where you're going to grow up. All of these experiences are going to, help evolve your soul one way or another. I don't know why I'm being told to talk about this too, but even choosing if you're going to be the victim or the perpetrator. Sometimes there's that as well, where maybe in one life, we were the ones doing the not so nice things to people. And now we've got to sort of experience that. Some people may call that karma. But now it's our turn to experience what it's like to be the victim. So, there's all sorts of things that go into making that choice of what that life is going to look like if we even choose to reincarnate. I usually have my spirit guide really involved with these sorts of meetings, but Jesus has been very heavily involved today. But what he shares is that you don't have to start off directly with Jesus. There's a lot of stigma and taboo around him, unfortunately, and he understands that. And so for a lot of us, we may not even be comfortable. There may be some negative feelings associated with that name. And so the understanding is that, well, one, he's always going to be there no matter what, in a loving way, not in a creepy way, but in a loving way, to be there when you, as in your audience, are ready. But there are so many other amazing, loving entities that are there for us. Our spirit guides, angels, ancestors, other ascended masters, extraterrestrials even, because some really resonate with that. And that's a whole another hour topic, I'm sure. But there are so many other loving entities, even other realms like dragons, unicorns. I mean, people have talked about all sorts of guides. And that's why I say never say never. You can't sit here and tell people follow your intuition and then tell them, no, that's not right. So we want to make sure we let them follow their intuition. So know that you've got this amazing network of loving entities on the other side. They don't have to be Jesus. You may certainly invite Jesus in or other ascended masters, but know that if that's the hesitation, don't let it be, because there are so many other loving entities out there. And I feel like along that journey, then you may start to be more comfortable with inviting ascended masters or inviting others in. And I would start with maybe one or two. I also like to use the term soul team, because sometimes you just don't know who you want or need. And if you just let them decide and you just say, I need my soul team here, they'll know who to send through as well. This shouldn't be an overwhelming process. So if you're like not a ritual person, if you're not a schedule person, if you're like things quick and easy and like, hey, I still got a lot of life that I've got to deal with during the day. I can't sit here and meditate for an hour every day. Fine, totally fine. It should not be an inconvenience. It's going to be whatever you need it to be to fit into your life. And know that it isn't just limited to an hour in your life. It's every day. It's the whole day that your guides can help you and guide you in whatever you need. Your soul team can love you and guide you. And they want to. They really want to. So if you feel like you haven't had that in your life, if you feel like, where are they? Are they listening? I feel like I'm not getting any support. Have you tried asking?